Hi everybody, I hope you're all doing well. So, long time no speak. I have been on holiday, as you might be able to tell from the title of this video, and so as a result of that, well, normally when I go on holiday, I do try to pre-film videos, or I bring my tripod on holiday and try and film things there and get things edited whilst I'm on holiday, but this time I decided no, I am completely taking a break from everything this holiday. I just completely turned my brain off to everything and did pretty much nothing, and I'm very glad for it actually. But this is my first day back at work. I am back working from home, at least for today, back in the office tomorrow. I decided, you know, if we're fully getting back into the swing of things, then filming videos is also one of the things that I'm definitely wanting to do. And even though there has been a bit of a gap in terms of my uploading and also in terms of my letting you know about the books that I've been reading, I decided instead of going back and talking about, I think it was the last video I did was my April wrap-up part 1, at least in terms of my wrap-up videos. I'm not going to do my April wrap-up part 2 in this video. I'm not even going to do my May part 1 wrap-up. I'm going to talk just about the books that I read whilst I was on holiday because I'm still in the mood to talk about those. That is where my brain is at, and therefore that is what we are doing. And you may have seen on Instagram that I posted like quite a towering TBR that I was planning to get through. I think it was about 11 or 12 books, which considering I was on holiday for 9 days was a bit ridiculous, and I knew I wasn't going to get through all of them, and I didn't get through all of them. But it's one of those things, isn't it, where if you don't pack as many books, you end up reading all of them and then you have nothing. But if you pack more books than you need, you end up reading like one of them. So yeah, it was a ridiculous amount of books to bring, but you know, I'm glad I had options. And for the most part during this holiday, I decided to lean fully into going down the romance book route. I wanted this holiday to be one where I just read books that are just completely indulgent fun, things that I know are going to make me happy. Like I say, with a couple of exceptions, but without much further ado, let's just get into these books. So the first book that I finished whilst I was on holiday is one that I started reading in physical form whilst I was in the car on the way to the airport. I ended up being around about like 66% of the way through in the car because it is just such a fast thing to read. But then I found out that my library's app actually had the ebook, so I just continued on ebook and finished within like a day or two of arriving. And that book was Here is the Beehive by Sarah Crossan. Now this isn't quite a romance book, though, you know, I guess a romance is dealt with in this. We have this main character of Anna, who has been in a relationship with Connor when he unexpectedly dies. So of course we're dealing with a grief narrative, but with a bit of a difference because we find out very quickly that Connor was actually married with children, which Anna did know about during the affair. Very few people knew about this affair, and so Anna is in this very unique situation, or maybe not so unique, I'm sure this has happened to many people, where she is dealing with this immense grief about this man that she has loved and lost, but she can't talk about it to anybody because then that would reveal the affair. And she's also even more involved because she is actually the executor to his will, and so she's having to deal face to face with his grieving widow who knows nothing about their affair. She's getting more of an insight into their marriage, into this woman that she's always seen as the other woman, and in her own self-constructed narrative, when she's always had, you know, distance between her and the wife, she's always internally painted her and pictured her one way, and she realizes that that perception that she had, maybe what Connor had been telling her about his wife, was not quite true. Little bits about Anna's life are slowly filtered into the story, just kind of peppered throughout, and that paints more of a picture of what she's going through as well. It's all told in verse, which I think was a really fun, unique way of telling this story, and I thought worked really well. And I really enjoyed reading this. I will say the main character of Anna I found completely detestable. I don't think I've ever disliked a main character more, at least not recently that I can remember. But at the same time, it's not like I dislike this main character and therefore I don't like the book. The way that Sarah Crossan writes this character is just so good, and it's so compelling that it makes me want to keep reading it, even though I'm just like, you are a terrible person. And it's not about the fact that she's having this affair, it's because Anna as a character is so incredibly judgmental of even the tiniest things about other people. Constantly throughout this book she's judging people for different things, and I'm just like, I would not want to be around you. Like, I don't understand how anybody likes you. You're a horrible person. But like I say, so well done, and I would like to thank Shah over at Thoroughly Enjoyed Books for constantly recommending this and being very excited when I mentioned that I was reading it. I'm gonna get the non-romance audiobook out of the way that I listened to whilst I was on holiday, and that was The Immortal Life of Henrietta Lacks. This is a history that I've been wanting to read for such a long time. This is all about the life of Henrietta Lacks, who upon getting her diagnosis of terminal cancer, the doctors and scientists involved in her treatment took some of her cancer cells, and it was discovered very quickly that they just kept on multiplying and didn't seem to die like normal cells would. These became known as the healer cells, and they were used to further medical advancement across so many different fields. But these were taken without her consent, experimented on without her consent, and even though these cells have brought so much medical knowledge and so much money into the industry, the family that she left behind have not received a penny of compensation, and and we're not even told about the fact that these scientists were using her cells until about 20 years after the fact. This is made up of Rebecca Skloot's investigation into this case in her interviews with the family, particularly how understandably they were kind of put off from speaking to her because they'd had other journalists kind of prying and not being very respectful. We're delving into themes of race, especially into medical ethics, issues surrounding consent, and basically what is permissible when it comes to medicine and health. How far should people be compensated for the use that their bodies, their cells, their body parts, their organs, and even now our information, how far should we be compensated for that, and how much is justified when it's for the greater good? This is an absolutely fantastic book. I'm really glad that I did eventually get around to this. It's one, like I say, that I've been meaning to pick up for years, and it's one that I definitely think should be on everybody's life TBR. The conversation in this is unfortunately still very, very pertinent and relevant to today. And now we get into the romance. The first romance book that I finished was The Love Hypothesis by Ali Hazelwood. As you see, it is the TikTok sensation. Everybody's been talking about this book. Got the main character of Olive, who is a scientist doing her PhD. She's basically trying to convince her best friend that she doesn't mind if said best friend ends up going out with a man that she had a couple of dates with. Her best friend Anne is kind of resistant to going out with this man because she's convinced that Olive secretly does still really like this man. And Olive is like, no, absolutely, you can go out with him. In fact, I've already got a date lined up. And in order to prove this, she goes to what I would say fairly extreme lengths, kind of dodgy lengths, and she basically kisses the first guy who comes around the corner in order to prove to Anne that she is over this guy. And it turns out that the man that she has kissed is Adam Carlson, who is one of the most respected professors there. He's also known for not being the nicest guy. He's kind of a bit snarky, a bit dismissive of the students, doesn't really care about tiptoeing around his students' feelings. So she is then very, very surprised when Adam suggests that they do, in fact, start fake dating. It's beneficial to Olive because she can prove to Anne that she is in a committed relationship, that she doesn't care about Anne going out with a guy that she used to go out with. And it turns out to be beneficial for Adam because, as it turns out, the university that he is working at are withholding funds from him because they think he's a bit of a flight risk. They think that he'll hop over to another college imminently unless they hold his funds, unless he starts to settle down and put roots down. And if he is very publicly dating somebody, maybe they will believe that he is not a flight risk. And so, as I say, they start fake dating, contriving different reasons to meet up with each other, to prove to the world that they are a couple. But of course, slowly but surely, through all this fake dating, through all this time spent together, they start to realise that they have feelings for each other. And I just thought this was delightful. I can completely see where all the hype came from with this one. I've seen a few people mentioning the fact that they find it a bit icky that it's a professor and a student. I don't so much because, number one, he is not her professor. He has never had any sort of authority over her as a student. They're in a similar department, but he has never been a mentor to her. He's not on any like advisory boards. He's not critiquing her work at all. They're both consenting adults. She, I believe, is 26, 27, he's 34, so it's not a massive age gap. So I personally didn't have an issue with it, but you know, you do you. I thought it was really sweet. I loved how at the beginning of each chapter there was a new hypothesis that the main character would posit, and then you'd see how it was explored in the narrative. For the most part, I liked how these two communicated. I could see that they did really care about each other, and the times where they didn't communicate so well, I could see why. You've got an exploration of demisexuality in this. The main character, Olive, it's not explored too in depth, but you know, a nice bit of representation there. I've also heard that this was originally fashioned from a Kylo Ren Rey fanfiction that was refashioned into modern day. I am not a Star Wars person, so I cannot speak for that, but apparently it made other people happy. And yeah, I really enjoyed this. This was probably my favourite of the romances that I read during the holiday. And yeah, if that sounds like your cup of tea, definitely read it. I then back-to-back read Beach Read by Emily Henry and Book Lovers. Beach Read being the first book that she wrote, and Book Lovers being the most recent one that came out. In fact, I believe this was published this month. Having previously read You and Me on Vacation and absolutely loving it. What I will say is that I do think I did prefer You and Me on Vacation slightly more than these two, but these two were certainly very good fun and has cemented Emily Henry as one of my favourite authors now. I will definitely be picking up anything else that she writes. In Beach Read, you've got these two main characters of January and Gus, both of whom are novelists. January, who writes like women's fiction, romance, and Gus, who is more on the literary fiction track. And January has always been really convinced that Gus looks down on her writing, on the fact that being a romance novelist, she relies very much on like happily ever after, which he doesn't believe in. He thinks the world is dark and sinister, and that all of these happy endings in romance are just full of nonsense. Over the summer, they end up bumping into each other, being next door neighbours, and they decide that they are going to trade genres. They end up bumping into each other over a summer when they're both expected to be writing their next work, and they're both feeling a bit of writer's block due to personal issues, which are revealed more as the book continues. And they decide, in order to combat this writer's block and also to kind of prove a point to each other, they are going to make a bet in which they both swap genres. January is going to write a literary fiction novel and Gus is going to write a romance. And the bet is basically which of them will be published first. They're starting to learn more about each other's craft, learning more about the merits of each genre and also their own personal style as a writer when their normal genre is taken away from them. And of course, the chemistry is soaring and the sparks start to fly. Book Lovers also has a literary bent to it. You've got the main character of Nora, who is a literary agent, and Charlie, who is an editor. And Nora has always thought of Charlie as being a bit of a nemesis of hers. She doesn't really seem to like him, and yet she's always drawn into email correspondence with him, even though he rubs her up the wrong way. Nora is also reeling from breakups, and the fact that in her own life she seems to have been cast in the trope as this like devil lady, this disposable girlfriend who, after going out with her, all of her previous boyfriends seem to end up getting married to the loves of their lives soon after. And this is a rut she desperately wants to get out of. She and her younger sister end up going on holiday to one of the locations that was the setting for one of Nora's biggest success stories, the real life town that inspired one of her author's books. And while she is there, it turns out that this is actually the hometown of Charlie, the editor who she's seen as her nemesis and who had previously, when she had pitched this book to him, had rejected it. And so she's starting to learn even more about him, seeing him in his home habitat. And it's not the conventional like girl goes to small town romance. And this book is very, very meta about it, about this idea of like going to a small town, finding a handsome farmer, completely reinventing yourself, changing your life, being charmed by the small town community. Neither of these main characters are that kind of stereotype, that kind of trope, but there are a lot of jokes kind of hinted that way. And through this month where she's having a bit of time to recuperate, to see her life in a different context, more things are revealed about their relationship and especially also Nora's relationship to her younger sister. And I think that's why I did slightly prefer Book Lovers over Beach Read. I felt like it was dealing with a lot more things. I also preferred like the supporting characters in this book over this, which I find really interesting because I'm personally not a big fan of that kind of like Hallmark movie trope of going to a small town and suddenly you find the love of your life there. But I think because it was so meta about it and it was very deliberate, it was playing with these tropes a little bit more than I feel like Beach Read was. I think I slightly preferred it, but like I said, I liked both of these books very much. And I do feel like Beach Read got more into its like secondary plots as you went through the book. More things were revealed about like the backstories for both of these characters, but I felt like it came a little bit too late in the narrative for my personal liking. I would say my personal order in terms of Emily Henry books would be You and Me on Vacation, then Book Lovers, then Beach Read. But still a fantastic author who I'm really enjoying the books of and looking forward to anything that she writes next. Then the last romance book that I got to, another TikTok sensation, is The Hating Game by Sally Thorne. In this we have Lucy and Joshua, who are work colleagues. Basically they are working at a publishing house. All of these books are very much literary in the job description. Basically they started off at two rival publishers who ended up merging because it was economically savvy to do so. But both of these houses are very different in terms of personality and the kind of books that they like to publish, and especially in like their work attitudes. Lucy and her boss, who are much more like easygoing, very much like wanting to be friends with everybody, wanting to have fun at work, whereas Joshua and his boss and their division are much more like strict and serious. And as a result of this, Lucy and Joshua have been working for a year, and Lucy, since the first time she met him, has been convinced that he is hostile towards her, that he doesn't like her very much. And so we meet them at a point where they have been completely antagonistic towards each other as work colleagues, both working essentially as PAs in an office that doesn't feel big enough for the two of them. And it's gotten to a point where they are basically like HR's nightmare. They're constantly sending reports about the other to HR, constantly bickering, constantly playing like these little office games with each other just to annoy and wind up the other. And then the chance for a promotion is dangled in front of the two of them, and they both want in on this position. But part of that promotion means being higher than the other, being the other one's boss. And so a deal is struck that whoever ends up getting the promotion, the other will leave the company. But of course, as the narrative unfolds and as we start to learn more about the other, we start to realise that feelings of hate can be just as intense as feelings of love. And maybe there is a reason that they are so fixated on each other. Maybe there is a reason that Lucy knows everything that he gets up to, and even down to like the shirts that he wears, the rotation that he wears his shirts. And maybe it's because they're in love with each other. Once again, this was really good fun. I would say maybe this is a little bit lower down in terms of the other books and how much I like them. I think kind of same issue that I had with Beach Read, where I just didn't think the supporting cast in this were quite as strong. I loved the dynamic between Lucy and Joshua, all of, like the insults back and forth, all these games that they would play with each other, and it was so clear very, very early on that they were antagonistic towards each other because there was an attraction there. And I think it is handled really well, and like the switch in Lucy's mind to, oh, I think I'm attracted to this man. oh no, what does this mean? It was really well done. Originally, I wasn't really interested in seeing the movie that has been inspired by this, that has been adapted from this, but actually I'm really now wanting to watch it and seeing how they dealt with this story. I just kind of want to see these two squabbling. I'd say if we are ranking the 4 romance books that I read in terms of how much I like them, I would say bottom of the pile for me is Beach Read, then The Hating Game, then Book Lovers, and then The Love Hypothesis. I think maybe I shouldn't be reading romance books back to back. I think maybe I need to space them out with something else, especially because like at least these 3 books, the characters all had like similar kind of jobs. They were either authors or editors or literary agents. Did it all have to be in publishing? I say this as somebody who works in publishing. It felt like a little bit too much. Maybe I do need to kind of pace myself with these, but it was a very enjoyable time on my holiday to get to delve into these books. So that was everything that I completed during my holiday. I also did want to kind of briefly give a nod to the fact that I got 146 pages through The House with the Golden Door by Elodie Harper. This is the 2nd book in the Wolf Den trilogy. I picked this up actually after going to a talk that she was giving at Blackwell's in Oxford. I love The Wolf Den. I thought it was such a fantastic historical fiction set in Pompeii just before the eruption of Vesuvius, and this is the follow-up. I'm around about a third of the way into this. I basically started this at the beginning of my holiday and then decided that I wanted to dive straight into the romance book, so this wasn't quite what I was in the mood for, but that doesn't mean anything about the quality of the book. I think it's absolutely fantastic so far. I definitely agree with Elodie Harper that I think this is even better than The Wolf Den was, so I'm definitely going to be coming straight back to this. But the flavour of the holiday was the romance, so this ended up getting shelved for now, but I'm going to be picking this up definitely in June. So there we go, those are all of the books that I read whilst I was on holiday. Do let me know if you've read any of these lately or if there are any that you are looking to check out. I know that my spring summer holiday was fairly early in the year, so do let me know if you are planning on going away and any books that you would like to pick up. I'd love to hear from you. I hope you're having a fantastic day, and I look forward to talking to you again soon. Thanks. Bye!